disrobe. Actually, I'm hot.
Well, you didn't know it was summertime when you booked this late October visit.
It's beautiful, stunning.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto, where you wanna get a city love. I'm from Toronto, where you wanna get a city love. I'm in Toronto, Mike, we wanna get a city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1568 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Advantaged Investor Podcast from Raymond James Canada. Learn how to plan, invest, and live smarter. Season 7 of Yes, We Are Open, an award-winning podcast from Monaris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic debut, is Adam Fox. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fox. I can't say faux. That isn't French. F-A-U-X.
It's an English name. You should think
Guy Fawkes. No.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Okay.
It's a derivative of F-A-W-K-E-S.
Okay.
It's a 1,000-year-old English name. There's no doubt there's a Norman influence in there somewhere, but it's been in Britain for at least 1,000 years.
Okay.
Like auxiliary, audience, you know.
Well, you look good for your age.
Thank you. Since 1066.
Right.
Yeah, since the Norman invasion.
Now, tonight's the night, Adam, so I'm letting the listenership know that TMLX 16 is tonight at 6 p.m. That's the 16th Toronto Mic'd listener experience, and for the first time ever, we've gone east of Yonge Street. Wow, can you believe it? We're at Jarvis and Queens Quay. That's where GLB Brew Pub is. Will you be joining us?
Yes, it is a block and a half from my home.
Oh my God.
So
you got to swing by.
I will.
And
can I bring a date?
You can bring, you know what, you can. Absolutely.
Okay.
You can bring a date. We're going to have a beer, and you're welcome to buy more than that, but a beer on me. And then there's food, delicious food from the GLB Brew Pub kitchen, and we're going to have a blast. Looking forward to it. But here's a small world story for you. I went on a bike ride just before our recording. It's a beautiful day out there. What do you think of this? Can you get used to this climate change? What do you think?
In the near,
yeah, in the immediate future, it's
in the
okay,
micro
right?
thing, it's absolutely wonderful on a day-by-day basis. I'm not sure I'm happy about it for my children.
I mean, I'm still biking in shorts. It's a great feeling. But I'm biking along. I'm on Lakeshore. This is like exactly 30 minutes ago. I just checked the clock. 30 minutes ago, I'm on Lakeshore, and I can see the distinctive gait that a fellow FOTM, that means friend of Toronto Mike, James Clark, strolling along Lakeshore. I pull over. I go, first of all, I said, James, Cam Carpenter is going to be at TMLX 16 tonight because Cameron Carpenter will be there, and he works closely with James.
Yeah.
Do you know Cam?
Yes. Not closely, but absolutely. We've met many, many times over the years.
And then James asks me who's up next. He likes to know who's coming up on Toronto Mike. I said, well, as it so happens, in 30 minutes, I'm going to sit down and have a great chat with Adam Fox. And he goes, I just played, I think, at the Horseshoe with Adam Fox.
Correct. Yeah, we shared a bill. Yeah, it was a great show. It got rained out. The mighty rain of the summer, the show got canceled, got moved again, but it was...
Good time? Who was on this bill? Like, who was there?
James Clark's band, also...
The Institute?
The Institute, yeah. Myself, so my new band, which is a kind of an amalgamation of players, one of whom is the original player, drummer in Pig Farm from the 80s, Leslie Becker. So that was our first time playing together in 30 years or so. And a few other people, Brent Wellborn, Jen Benton, who's a well-known bass player in and around Canada, has toured the world. And I'm sorry, and I'm blanking on the other band, and it's so
It happens.
it's so silly that I'm not thinking correctly. Gene,
Gene Champagne.
yes, and that.
Well, these
and
are
that
his
crew.
these are his drumsticks.
There you go.
Shout
So
out to Teenage Head.
Yeah, it not. Oh, sorry,
Not Gene Champagne.
not Gene Champagne. Gene.
Another Gene. I
Oh
wish
my
I could.
God.
I wish I could.
If
Mean
James
Gene.
Clark was here, he would tell you.
Well-
and it'll come to me.
Maybe he'll swing by.
Oh.
Mean Gene Okerlund, but
Yeah.
we'll come back. We'll come up with that in a
Yeah.
minute. Let's set a lot of people. I want to make sure people know who exactly are we talking about. So I'm wondering if we can go back and bring us to Pig Farm.
Yeah.
And I was kind of digging in. I should point out the reason we got connected. I want to give some love to a gentleman who's also going to be at the GLB Brew Pub tonight. I want to give some love to Blair Packham. How do you know Blair?
Blair. So my first encounter with Blair was via the television set. When I was a teen, I had seen some of the Jitters music. It was before their first record. They had a video. I'm forgetting the name of that as well. But when I was around 21, they released a single called "Last of the Red Hot Fools."
Of course.
And I was in the punk scene in Toronto, and at the time I had to hide my affinity for pure pop music, and I was a big fan of Blair. The story gets good because while we lived in different scenes, and he was a bit older than me, there was a moment in my career where I had part of my thumb chopped off. No joke. This is delivering Now magazines. We used to wear rings with big knives on them, and we'd sweep down. And I was working with another bass player, Brian Didjay, who's well known in Toronto. He accidentally swung and lopped off the top of my thumb from a corner to the center, and I needed to hire a guitar player to replace me on a cross Canada tour or to play along with me. And I thought, I'm going to ask that guy Blair Packham because I'm a big fan, and wouldn't that be crazy? And he said yes. So
Wow.
so that was the first time we played
So
together.
Blair was in Pig Farm for a bit.
for about 3 weeks. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's a fun fact.
And it was kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to ask him next time he visits or tonight what his experience was. But he had to take his shoes off. That was one thing I know he was surprised about, and he certainly had to turn up a bit. But it was, and then since we've known it, we've played a lot of gigs. He was also in a band I had called the Supers for a while with Maury LaFoy and
okay.
Graham Powell, later of Jan Arden and those kind of bands.
Okay. A lot of ground. Yeah. So we're going to basically, I'm very interested. I pulled some music. We're going to talk Pig Farm.
Yeah.
We're going to find out what you've been up to since Pig Farm. There's a lot of interesting connects with other people.
Yeah.
And I also, a couple of other notes before we get really rocking here. I am very interested as a young man at the number of times you moved.
Yeah.
Like, because it's, a lot of people move 3, 4, 5 times, but
Yeah.
you've got at least more than I would say about a baker's dozen or so.
Yeah. More. Can I dig into that for a second?
Yeah, dig
because
into
it's
that.
a big part of who I am.
Dig into that.
So initially I was born in downtown Toronto, Wellesley Hospital, which is now gone. And one side of my family are old Torontonians, back to, 1860, or Irish, that whole thing. My parents split when I was very young, about 2.5, and I lived in downtown Toronto, first at Flemington, I guess as a zygote, and then in the Beaches in the 60s. When my parents split up, my dad got custody. This is a rarity at the time.
Yeah.
And I could go, that's another story. But we moved to a farm that was a campus for OCA at the time, now called OCAD, where my dad taught kind of design aspects that he believed in a great life for everyone, I guess. So the students would live in teepees and domes, as did we, ice houses, 28-sided houses, everything on this place called Maggie's Farm.
Wow.
So even then, while we moved to a farmhouse, we rarely lived in the farmhouse. We lived in shelters in the
Like a yurt?
I lived in a yurt briefly. I've lived in as I said, a teepee. The big one was the 28-sided house. So as a kid coming home from, I'd grab the bus, go to school, but coming home, it was walking across a field, starting the fire, and that sort of thing.
Well, I'm trying to visualize a 28-sided house. Like,
I could send you a picture.
Okay.
I could send you a picture. It had a clear plastic roof, and my father was also big into geodesic domes and that sort of thing. But that's just the beginning. So we moved a few times too, from there to Shelburne. Then from there to Toronto, and he passed away when I was about 12. And then
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's
Well, I mean, that's a tough age to lose your dad.
it's a brutal age, but it has so much to do, I think, with my character now, because I didn't know my mother very well, but I was sent to live with her in North Toronto, Young and Eglinton area. I lived there for a few years, and then I left home. She was insistent that I not study music, and that if I was to study music, I was out. So I was out. I left. And I was playing the oboe. I did the best I could to impress her with my musicality, but it wasn't good enough. And then after that,
what was this hate for music coming from your mom?
ooh, I think it's much deeper than that. I think it was a hate for the culture, and I think it was. I mean, much later, my mom claimed to be a visual artist. I think there was some competition there. I think there was a reaction to my father, who was basically an artist, a very alternative living kind of guy. And I think her intention was to straighten me out. I mean, for many years after, she wouldn't even introduce me as a musician. Even when I had hits, she would just say, "This is my son, he's a carpenter." She would not acknowledge that aspect of me.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then after that, I think the homes just accelerate monthly. And a lot of it had to do with touring and traveling and, not being able to afford to have an apartment while on the road. So
how many different
I think
dwellings?
it's 34.
34 different dwellings. And then are you stabilized now?
I am. In fact, the house I live in right now, which is a cooperative in downtown Toronto, in Old Toronto, we've been there now for 13 years. That's by far the record. The last record was, I think, 5 years. And that was in Parkdale.
Okay, fascinating.
Yeah.
So you're comfortable moving around?
Well, yes and no. I mean, maybe it's partly being a father and having a daughter who's now 15 and seeing feeling the necessity to create an environment that was less transient than my own. But at the same time, I think the environment we're in right now is actually quite good for being a musician, and quite stable, easy to maintain, and quite inexpensive actually, by standards, Toronto standards at any rate.
Well, it's good to hear. Now, if you were Blair Richard Martin was on the show recently, and he was telling me about an artist co-op near here on Birmingham, and he's trying to get into that. And it's like, for us non-artists, I think this is interesting to note that there are these artists co-ops in the city.
Yeah, I think I mean I really kicked myself. I had the opportunity to be in one long ago, and coming from where I came from with my father, I think that in the headset, I'm amazed that I didn't take it up sooner. Depending on the co-op, I mean, people should know about this. There's some 236 co-ops in Toronto alone, and they're roughly referred to, I think, in politics as subsidized housing, but they are not. There are different kinds of subsidized housing, and in the case of my co-op, which is called Windmill Line, it's only subsidized in the sense that it once received a mortgage from a bank that was guaranteed by the government. The rest of it is not a subsidy. If you know what it's funny how we talk about subsidized. Everybody who takes a loan is subsidized. It doesn't matter whether you're GM or a homeowner or a car. You're subsidized, and so it's funny how it falls there. But in our co-op, for instance, you can be a doctor or a lawyer. There's no limit on the earnings that you make. Your only requirement is to show that you can pay your rent, and your rent can be adjusted. Some members, 25% can have adjusted rent, and traditionally the subsidy comes from an internal pool, not from the government. So that's beginning to change a little bit with COVID. Kind of turned things around a bit, but for the most part, 75% of the members of the co-op, so we have 260 units. It's pretty big. They all contribute $100 a month into a subsidy pool. So if you are a member and you're going through a hard time, you lost your job, you've got to battle cancer, you can request a subsidy. And it has no bearing on anybody outside the building.
No, fascinating.
Yeah. So that's the best kind of co-op, I think, where it doesn't matter what your political view. It's a neighborhood taking care of itself.
Okay, speaking of taking care of yourself, so when you realized you had to leave your mother's home because you wanted to be a musician, how old are you at this point?
16.
So at 16, you realized, oh, if I want to be in music, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
I got really lucky. This is a good story. So I was already, I think by the age of 15, I was planning my exit, and I was watching Much Music, the beginning of Much Music. I was seeing a band. I remember seeing L'Étranger with Andy Cash, a few other bands like that. I used to deliver newspapers, the Globe and Mail, and I would take on what were called adult routes. And I had a boss who I think he was very sensitive to me, and he was watching me thinking, wow, this kid's probably a little lost or messed up. And I told him the summer before I left out, I said, I need to find a job downtown. I'm going to leave home. And I hadn't told my mother. And he said, well, I know these guys down on Baldwin Street who run a restaurant called Yofi's. Yofi's on Baldwin Street was a vegetarian, Middle Eastern, one of the few at the time. And they were two ex-Israeli, I think one had been, the cook had been a tank commander, the other. And they had this beautiful business. And when I went there, it was John Delorier, who ended up being the bass player in Pig Farm, was also in L'Étranger originally, and Jolly Tambourine Man, and a bunch of other kind of pivotal early Toronto bands in the alt-rock or punk scene. He worked there, as well as a lot of other people who I know now. Jane Brown, who's an opera singer. It was a place where you could have green hair, you could have a mohawk, and they twisted the rules a bit. I was too young to work or serve alcohol, so they just kept me in the kitchen until I turned 18, and then you can serve. You can't drink it, but you can, Yeah.
I'm just thinking now, Doughboys, right? He was in Doughboys.
He was, yeah.
Shout out to Doughboys. And shout out to Scotty Mack, who went on to form one of my favorite bands, Rusty.
That's right, yeah. So that was, and we used to share a lot of gigs with the Doughboys. I was actually asked to try out as well at the same time as John, and we were in Pig Farm, and we actually had to have a meeting where this is a really great opportunity. Do you want it or do I want it? And he took the gig.
Took it.
He tried out and won the spot, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, so does Pig Farm come out of Yofi's? Where does Pig?
Oh gosh, no. Whether do you mean the name or the band
No,
itself?
just the band itself.
It certainly comes out of the neighborhood,
Okay.
the downtown core. I lived on Cecil Street. John lived on Grange Avenue, 57 Grange, which was a real kind of hub at the time for all rock musicians, I guess. One of those cases where 10 people live in a 3-story house and share their place. And
Sure.
but the initial explosion, the splitting of the atom happens at that house where I had been harassing John to play. He was already a local star. I was a complete nobody dishwasher, and with a bright blue guitar, and I kept harassing him, and he kept kind of turning me down. I did try it for a band with him and a few members of Andy Cash's band, Bruce PM. It was a temporary thing, and I didn't make it. But one day he finally acquiesced, and he said, okay, I know this drummer and this bass player. Come on over. We're going to try it out in our basement. And that became Pig Farm. And it was a 4-piece at the time. Leslie Becker, who I've just started playing with now again, John Delorier, and Sean Kinsella, who left the music industry almost entirely not long after. So that's the impetus. But the name, Leslie and I, shortly after, got a studio at the Coffin Factory down at 109 Niagara Street, which was a complete, warren of musicians and artists. And we lived across from the abattoir. So we thought, Pig Farm, that'll do it.
And Pig Farm, for the record, because when I Google search it, sometimes it's 2 words. I believe it's 1 word. Can you definitively tell us? Pig Farm, 1 word.
I can't tell you whether.
Well, if you can, who can? Come on,
know.
Adam.
I haven't been able to distinguish, because I have posters that are 1 word, posters that are 2.
I found both in my my searches here, and it's. I feel like even from now on, it should be 1 word, even if just for SEO purposes, right?
Okay.
Because if you search Pig Farm, you know what you're gonna get. You're gonna get stuff about pig farms. But Pig Farm, 1 word, that's you guys.
Okay.
Okay, from now on.
Okay.
Can I play a little Pig Farm and then we can get into the nitty-gritty on Pig Farm?
Love it.
Okay, let's play a little bit of this.
Okay.
For those who don't remember Pig Farm. you singing.
That is, yeah.
Don't mind. Open the stars in the skies. Yeah, they're all mine. Now stick to my hands. They'll arrest me. I'm all say and no gums. That works best for me. But I say something true for once. Something true for once. But I say something true for once. But I say something true for once. Something true for once. But I say something. Every morning I wake up with the hopes that I'm drunk.
I'm hoping we'll stay right through to the groove when the groove hits. Do we have time?
Oh, make time.
Make time. Michael
Let
Phillip.
people drink this in. Oh, yeah, he's an FOTM too. Shout him out.
Yeah. Michael, what? Say hello, Michael. Michael Phillip Voyevoda. We just saw each other the other night. Oh, here he is playing drums.
Here we go. And that makes complete sense. He worked at the Bare Naked Ladies.
Right. We were signed to Page Publications, along with the Lowest of the Low, and yeah, the Bare Naked
So
Ladies.
Page Publications is Stephen Page's dad.
Correct.
And I believe, this is a fun fact for the listenership, I believe that's Steve Simmons' uncle, is what I believe.
I don't know that, but
I
I'll
believe.
take your, yeah.
Oh, Steve tells me that anyways. But Page Productions put out the yellow tape, the famous yellow tape, in Bare Naked Ladies land, and Shakespeare My Butt by Lowest of the Low,
And Plug by Pig Farm.
and Plug by Pig Farm. You know, there's a Lowest of the Low documentary by a gentleman who's going to be at TMLX 16 tonight, Simon Head.
Yeah.
And in that doc, Stephen Page's dad and brother are joking that people thought they knew what they were doing, like all this cool indie music coming out of Page Productions. They thought, oh, maybe they have a good ear, but they were literally like, no, they were just, fulfilling this need or whatever for artists who needed it.
Yeah.
But you guys were on board. So how did you get involved with Page Productions?
While this outro happens on the song, I'm going to prepare that answer. I'm trying to.
Okay, no, let's listen to the
Listen to
answer.
this. This is live, by the way. Hell is going on?
No, I love it though. It sounds like early Pearl Jam to me.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. Love it.
I think Pearl Jam came later, didn't they?
Yeah, well, they come
Yeah.
out of Mother Love Bone.
Yeah.
And we're talking about 1990, I suppose,
Yeah.
when Pearl Jam formed.
I guess
They
it's
were
same timey. So the answer to your question, I was trying to write this down. Like I have my pen and paper. I'm
Yeah,
so old
amazing.
school. I'm not sure. There's the answer because I started thinking it either came through. So there were quite a few bands at the time following Pig Farm,
Okay.
and other musicians and people like Head, so Noah Mintz and Brendan Canning.
yeah.
That whole collection of people that include Feist. I'm not, and they're a little bit younger than me, and Bare Naked Ladies as well. I think were amongst that group. I'm not, but as you pointed out, Michael Voyevoda produced Gordon, our drummer at the time. I'm not sure. It might have been Jody Fernie Howe, our manager, who was working with Peer Music, and then he has a company now called CCS Rights Management, which is a big publishing group. I don't know how that happened. I think we were fiercely independent. By independent, I mean not associated with any organization whatsoever. Not a
Right.
million
And you're
dollars.
recording your own stuff on like
Yeah.
a multi-track
Yeah.
cassette deck, right?
Yeah, originally. But that album was recorded at at
Reaction
the original
Studios.
Reaction, but that's Reaction that was in the West End in the back alley of Niagara Street, Tecumseh
Wow.
Street. Roby Banerjee and Peter Polesnik, whose name you may know. They were the engineers on that, and Michael Phillip, of course, because he was in the band. He kind of, but it was recorded pretty quick. I think it was a week, top to bottom, $10,000 with advertising in kind of thing, fairly live. And I remember we took it over to the New Reaction to master it, and we mastered it on a Ghetto Blaster. I do remember that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. No. So as I soak this in, though, you have a guest on that recording, right? A member of Bare Naked Ladies. Like, what's the name of that song we just played?
Planet Chris.
Am I right that maybe Tyler Stewart's on that?
He's in the video.
He's in the video. Okay, so he's
Yeah.
not playing on
But
that
they were
song.
hanging out. And
Yeah.
no, he's not playing. Michael is playing
Right.
drums. Myself and Bourne is on cello. There, a gaggle of people came over to sing backups. You hear the kind of the choir stuff in the beginning. And I honestly don't remember who may have dropped in and who didn't. But it's Michael, John Delorier, and myself playing the instruments. That's for sure.
Wow.
But that connection to the ladies, the drummer who replaced Michael, 7 drummers in that band, by the way, shared an apartment on Bathurst Street. My God, Steve Pitkin, and Steve is now in that band. With the 3 of them, they wear big hats. They're really quite big right now. They tour a lot. It's kind of a roots band.
The Three Amigos.
No. No, not Steve Martin. Not to be confused with Steve Martin and those guys. Anyway, he's a big rock star now too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But so he would just show up at video stuff. There was a connection briefly. I just saw Stephen Page the other day at Massey Hall because he was opening for Billy Bragg,
Amazing.
and I went with Blair, and Michael Phillip was there sitting next to me along
Who
with
lives near here?
Annalise Norana
Yeah.
as well, and so Paisley Ura, and oh my gosh, yeah. So all those people were there, and because I've been out of it for a while, here I am rambling. I've been out of the scene for a little while. It was really interesting to see everybody all in one place.
Well, so taking us back there. So when
Yeah.
Pig Farm,
Yeah.
you guys record Plug.
Mm-hmm.
Who's playing Pig Farm in Toronto? Like CKLN? Is that the Ryerson station? Is that where would you hear Pig Farm in Toronto?
CFNY, CKLN, York.
So with CFNY, I guess that's where I'm going here.
A little bit.
A little bit?
Pig Farm did better out of Toronto. So by that era, so I think I sent you somewhere. I told you the story the first time I heard myself, which was on CIUT, and I was working with Michael Snow. He's an artist, a Canadian artist,
Of course.
of renown, and
Big deal.
and so
No longer with us, sadly.
yeah, he
Except, can I question your story and tell you I think it was CKLN where you heard yourself first?
sure.
I only because
That's
is that really?
did I write that down?
Yeah.
Well, then let's believe that.
Although it could have been CIUT.
Well, we did a lot of work simultaneously.
Okay.
So, you know what? You're probably right.
Well, it's you that's right, but the old
Yeah.
you,
The old
the
me
new
when I wrote,
you
yeah, because
thinks
this
it's
is
CIUT now.
maybe you know what? I wrote it. It must be so. At any rate, the story is I was at 9 Hannah Street, which is now a police warehouse. It was a big old warehouse, and I was working on those sculptures. And my job was to spray the giant isocrit, that substance that expands into foam. We had taken the maquettes of his sculptures. They were small, like 3 feet high. Our job was to build the large armature out of steel and then wrap it in bedding foam and then spray it with this.
Because I know where this story's going, I feel like we need to really set this up right, because this is a mind blow. So I got to warn the listenership. They're about to get a mind blow here. So Michael Snow and you and a bunch of artists are at 9 Hannah Street
Mm-hmm.
working on these sculptures.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're now, so these are like these mammoth sculptures you're working on.
Yeah.
And tell us whatever happened to these mammoth sculptures that Michael Snow and you and many other artists were working on
Yeah.
at this time.
And I'll be clear, I was the lowly technician. Those sculptures are now on the dome, the Rogers Center,
This
the
is
Sky
the
Dome.
audience.
The audience.
My goodness
Yes.
gracious.
I had my hand, I have pictures of myself, standing next to those sculptures. And I had this horrible gig. Like, my gig was the worst of all. I had these 2 big, containers of chemicals that mixed together. And I had to wear this spacesuit and this respirator.
Well, at least they had you wearing something.
And I had this gun because I had to deal with all these horrific chemicals and spray spray the armatures. I mean, I was part of the early creation of bringing them up to the math of, expanding them. And I used to I'd show up at the Beverly Tavern after work covered in rashes and spots and weird little sores.
But you knew what you were working on? Like you knew this was for the new dome?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I mean, the fact that what an iconic, work of art in this city. I mean, there's not a person listening who hasn't seen the audience at the dome.
I know. And it's odd. Every time I go there, I still have a habit of pointing it out to my daughter and she's kind of like, yeah.
Well, how could you not, man?
Whatever, Dad. You know how it is. It doesn't matter how.
It's like, but if can you imagine a day where you walk by the dome and the audience is there, the fans or whatever, and the audience, and you don't mention that fun fact to whoever you're with? Like that's the time to shut it down. Like shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. It's time to get your booking there because you're done. Like if you can walk by the audience and not point out to whoever you're with, I worked on that. Like, right? That's everything. Of course you got to point it out. It's like if your song comes on the radio, you're like, that's me singing.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes, and I find this as a kind of common thread in my life, there was a time when I kind of, after, a steady period of touring, performing, living off music, writing, I took a break and I got a job at the Ontario Science Centre as an AV person. And I found myself sitting talking to people, and anything I told them, they just wouldn't believe me because it depends because I have many, many stories. I can tell you that even if you search Wikipedia, which you might have done, you won't find anything. Do you know why?
Why?
Because I've been barred from telling my story. I kid you not. I wrote an entry, a simple entry, and I put my prehistory, which we haven't really gone into my story and who I grew up with. My father, Al Fox, who also, you may or may not know, designed the G2 for Clairtone. The spacey stereo with the big round cast iron speakers.
I think so.
Yeah, he was a well-known guy, but he also, died relatively unknown. But also the radial arm drafting table, and there's a Canadian stamp put out about 25 years ago. And then I wrote things like I lived in geodesic domes and teepees, and there's these experiments and these living, and they just wrote back to me and said, this is not possible. You're lying. And I guess they take your IP.
They want you to corroborate. You need to link. Just so you know, the most recent episode of Toronto Mike to Stephen Brunt, but the one before that between Marsden and Brunt, we did an FOTM cast and we did a whole segment on the Wiki Police and how we've been trying to get some stuff on Wiki which belongs there, and we're having difficulty. Shout out to Rosie Gray Teo, because you have to kind of like Toronto Mike, you need to have corroborate with sources like the Globe and Mail. You have to link to an article there, the CBC. It's very difficult for guys like you and I to get content on Wikipedia. Yeah. Even if it belongs there and even if it's true.
Well, and over time, books are coming out now that corroborate some of it. And students, the students of my father, as they became well-known, designers, etc., they tell their story in an environment that is considered respected or academic or whatever, and then you start to see these things unfold. I do think that a lot of it is just something I've kind of given up sometimes telling the stories. And I think it's, the other day I was reading Chris Stein's biography from Blondie.
Right.
And when I read books like that, I feel at home because it's so insane. Queen Street West, I think, as an environment in the 80s was very much like New York City in the 70s. Somebody like Chris Stein, who came from Brooklyn, kind of haphazardly fell into music, but suddenly he was surrounded with Bowie, Iggy Pop, Andy Warhol, The Factory, and he's in it, you're in it, and he had no intention of being there. And I think that was possible on Queen Street as well. There's a period there and for about a decade where I did the math, something like 60 people became, international stars, and they lived within 2 miles of each other across that strip.
Well, do you mind maybe sharing a little more detail since you were there? Because I'm personally very interested in this scene at that time.
Yeah. Well, I think and you know what, I realized I didn't answer the first question. I don't even remember what the question was. We deviated.
Don't worry.
The listening to the song. Can I I'll finish the Michael Snow song.
Yes.
Because you debated me on it and we got to finish it.
Right, CKLN, not CIUT.
Yes, CKLN.
Important details. We need to capture the truth. And shout out to Charlie Angus, who is an FOTM, and I believe he's writing a book about this scene this Queen Street scene, I believe.
Is he? I don't know.
I think it's like it's coming soon.
Yeah.
He'll
Good.
be on the top
I'd
about
love to read it. I think there's some perspectives. I'm considered a young Queen Streeter, so I came, 3 years too late, kind of thing.
So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna wrap up the audience story with Michael Snow.
Yeah.
But then you got to get back to the Queen Street
Okay.
in the late '80s.
So-
I need to know more about it.
Quick thing. One day we were all sitting around. We're working on the sculptures. They're carving. I'm picking at the scabs on my arms from the chemicals, and we're listening to the radio. And Michael Snow, not just an artist, he was a musician, and the CCMC was a kind of a groundbreaking alternative music group in Toronto, often associated with the Music Gallery, another Queen Street, thing. And so they would listen to college radio. And our song that had been recorded on with Michael Peter Hudson, I believe, you've read the story about the cassette tapes, but we went in. We fired the bass player, and I said I have a couple of songs. We recorded a song, and it came on the radio. And I thought, well, I can either be the dog's body for great artists, or I can pursue this musical thing. And there I am. I must have made it by now, I thought, and I either foolishly or wisely took up the the music side. But I could have easily fallen into visual arts because I was also surrounded by that. So now you want to know about Queen Street. I think Queen Street, so I had a view of it already because my father had taught at OCA. So when I was at 5 or 6, I used to hang around. So just north of Queen Street, off McCall, is OCA. And so, the haberdasher / I guess, influx of the Chinese and East Asian culture neighborhood, along with, I think, with Portuguese and Italian working class. It was just an amazing neighborhood. And Queen Street itself was ideal because nobody wanted to go there. My apartment was $300 at the corner of Queen and Spadina, 3-bedroom, right? Across from the Horseshoe Tavern. Except for, it seemed like the disenfranchised or the people who had grown up there in their families. And so, 3-story buildings with stores and fruit stores and bakeries and butchers and lots of bars and lots of cheap apartments. And in the near vicinity, lots of cheap warehouse space that was associated with, I guess, the garment industry earlier on, right? So lots of rehearsal space. It was just ideal. Cheap, ideal, and quiet, and a couple of great local bars like the Beverly Tavern, the Cameron, the Horseshoe.
Sure.
And so it was ideal. And I think people from all over kind of flocked there because it was an alternative to what was going on in the world. I think there was a throwback to acoustic. Everything that was on the radio at the time couldn't be performed by normal people. You couldn't be a regular person and have a $600,000 synth. You couldn't imitate Madonna. You couldn't imitate that early 80s stuff, So
Right.
hence, I think my view of Lowest of the Low, Bare Naked Ladies, even Pig Farm, it was kind of a return to kind of a folk attitude, guitar, bass, drums, It was wonderful. It was crazy. The speakeasies, I can't even begin. That's a whole podcast, but just ideal and dangerous too. Easy to get yourself in deep.
Well, would you want to name check some of the artists
Who might be there?
who were there?
I would say so. Peaches, so Meryl Nisker, Sarah Harmer. Obviously the Blue Rodeo guys, Handsome Ned. Handsome Ned gave me my first haircut. He gave me a rockabilly Mohican.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Jim Cuddy speaks very highly of Handsome Ned, his mentor there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you'd have to say the older crowd, which I say the older crowd, and I was lucky to get in with the older crowd. There's the people hanging around like Andy Cash and Chuck Angus and that whole gang. What else? I mean, there's in the punk scene, there were the Goofs, of course. And so it was also the center of traveling bands. So anybody, SNFU, or if they toured Canada, they certainly played there. I saw Dinosaur Jr. at the Cameron House.
Wow.
The Cameron House.
No, that's I didn't know that they played Cameron House. Yeah.
Stacks, the full stacks. It just, seeing stuff like that in that. I was an early fan of Teenage Head, of course. One of our first gigs at Pig Farm was opening for Teenage Head.
Wow.
And recently, the replacement singer Dave Rave, saw him at a gallery thing recently.
He's been here.
Yeah.
Shout out to
The
Dave Ray.
Shakers.
Yeah. He came on fairly recently, but then I did bump into him. Tom Wilson. There was his book Beautiful Scars. They did a musical.
Yeah.
And at the premiere, I was just Stephen Brunt and I were just talking about. I bumped into him there too. But him, Dave Hodge, all these sports guys were there. But yeah, definitely Dave Ray was there. Kevin Hearn was there.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of cool artists were there. Kevin Drew.
I'm thinking a rehearsal space on Soho Street. Across the hall was Bruce Coburn, Colin Linden. We shared a space with the Look People.
Is James B famous?
James B.
Would you consider James B famous?
He's Toronto famous. I'm amazed by his. I don't know how he has that persona, and I haven't spoken to James in a long time, but I'm watching him as the jazz aficionado of the world, and it's so directly opposed to what I knew of him in the Luck People.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just astonishing, and I think one thing I'm very proud of is being still alive after living in that environment, and because it was easy to do some serious damage.
Wow. I'm on the live stream. Jeremy Hopkin is there. He's the official Toronto historian of Toronto Mike. And Jeremy Hopkin will be, I want to let the listenership know, before Halloween, he's dropping by to kick out Haunted Toronto. So we're going to talk about places in Toronto that are, I'll put quotes around it, haunted. Okay, that's always fun to do that before Halloween. But he just says on the live stream, Queen West got gentrified, and it destroyed its cool. So when did Queen West stop being the Queen West that you remember so positively?
Well, so I don't know. It wasn't so quick. I mean, I think there was a time when the Rex Hotel, I would say that's where the Strip began. And because I spent maybe a couple of weeks. It's a place I lived briefly, the Rex Hotel, maybe a week or two, but it was one of those places between couches, or because there's a lot of couches in there somewhere too. I think it was gradual, and a lot of us, I started living at Queen and Spadina, and then I moved to Queen and Bathurst, and then I moved to Queen and Ossington, and then I moved to, and eventually ended up in Parkdale at Roncy, on King. So slowly just got pushed west. I try to remind myself, and that neighborhood is still chock full of musicians, the Metric People and all that, especially Parkdale, north of Queen. I try not to think of it as the gentrification. Certainly, when I visit Queen Street, I'm astonished at the disappearance of what I knew as Queen Street. But at the same time, you can still hit the camera on a Sunday night and see some of the best players. I'm still blown away by what happens. So the venues themselves, I think, have maintained a certain aura and still have an influence despite who visits there in the day.
Good point.
So I don't think it's over, but I also sometimes worry, and maybe traveling does this. I think people can overstate the value of certain moments, scenes, venues. And this is not an anti-history, but I remind myself that all over the world there are thousands of scenes and clubs and hip strips and cool places, and the more I live, the more I realize that this one is just one, and it's okay if it moves on. It's okay if it changes and adjusts and moves. And finally, I was in Hamilton yesterday playing a daytime show, as I said, and it felt like it was 1989, and in a good way, in the best way. It was somebody's basement. It was an art gallery. They didn't have to pay rent for it. I mean, somebody pays rent, but do you know what I mean? There wasn't a fee associated. It was a pass the hat. 8 songwriters sang and played, and all very good. Some of you may know, like Simply Saucer, Edgar Bro. He was there. And it was literally an amp, kind of this, it was just a makeshift gig, and it was wonderful. And it was so, I think that a movement back to community studio-based house parties is not such a bad thing.
But you had to go to Hamilton to get that.
Yeah, but that's okay. I don't mind. That's
Hamilton. What Ben Murgy tells me it's Toronto's Brooklyn. That's what he's been trying to sell me on for a while now.
I could see that.
Now, I'm going to bring you back, if it's okay, just because, we could talk forever, but I'm going to bring you back to Pig Farm here.
Okay.
So, Plug, big hit on college radio in this country. Like I was reading, it went to number one. It was at number one for a few months on college radio.
So this is where I'll make a correction for you. I think we had an album before Plug.
Okay.
It was called Hold Your Nose. And there were a couple of hits from there. One was called Subway Surfin', and another was 18 Wheelers. And to this day, if I meet a Pig Farm fan, those are the songs that they'll bring up.
Where would one hear? Where can you hear those songs today?
Spotify.
So it's on Spotify.
Yeah, I put it up recently. You can also go to my my Bandcamp for Adam Fox. Okay. I posted something on Facebook recently. Yeah, that stuff. I mean, I think we almost went there. I think Pig Farm did better outside of Toronto, so we were more likely to chart in Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. Initially, we got lots of support from the CBC, Brave New Waves, way back.
You know who I bumped into on Saturday?
Mm-hmm.
Brent Bambury.
There you go. Yeah.
At the arena, I'm at my kids' hockey arena. There's Brent Bambury. We had a great chat. I tweeted a photo of us together, but we were talking about all those Brave New Waves fans I still hear from because of his episode of Toronto Mike.
Yeah. Well, it was a lifeline. And for people who don't know, because that show, you had to go to Montreal to tape it. And if you could get them to advertise your tour itinerary before the internet, it was the only way for someone in Kamloops to know that you were coming through town. There just was no network greater than Brave New Waves, Brent Bambury, and all the other people associated. Kevin Komodo, right? I think took over or worked with him on that.
Possibly, yeah. Michael Barclay was there at some point. I'm trying to track them all. But so in this day and age where we're, you mentioned you lost a thumb practically from a Now magazine, right? I was wondering if Hollett cut you a check for that.
No, in fact, I left Now magazine after that because they gave me zeros. There was no injury support, no nothing. And it was there was no union. Yeah.
But now, there is no Now anymore. I mean, someone bought the logo, but it's not Now magazine.
And my thumb exists in its entirety, so I win. Right?
So I was checking out your thumb during that story, and it looks intact to me.
So I have
a sliver missing.
No, it's fine. It didn't go straight across. It went from the side to the center here, like a slice.
Okay.
And disappeared.
Okay.
And so they had to treat it every day. My doctor at Women's College Hospital, Dr. Heisey, shout out to Dr. Heisey. She just retired, but she became chief of staff at Women's College.
I know someone very close to me was a patient of Dr. Heisey. I know this name.
Amazing. Amazing doctor. I met her,
Yeah.
I think, in 1993 and pulled me through the worst times of my life, but also healed my thumb. And if you care for it, it does grow back as long as it's not right across.
Okay, I didn't know this. Okay, amazing. So, all right. So now I'm trying to track where we're at. But can I play a little clip I pulled just to give some context from the time? And it might be fun to talk about. Now, it's a long clip, so I'm not going to play it all. In fact, at some point I'll bring it down. But this is something I think worth.
Start things off. As always, our feature this week is Pig Farm.
And that's Simon Evans. Is that Simon Evans?
Yeah. Ring Finger.
Right.
Live on Much. Right?
Reunited and features Adam Fox, ex of the Lost Dakotas, John of the Doughboys, and the new drummer, Michael Phillip Wojciechowski, who, of course, is a well-known producer doing Such Like of the Bare Naked Ladies, which you, of course, know. Also talks today on Rheostatics and Change of Heart. Video was produced by James B. of the Log People. You know him. And they have an upcoming gig February 19th in Toronto at Ultrasound. Anyway, as always, our little edit this week is Pig Farm, because we always start off with an edit. You wouldn't know that, Dave. On Indie Street. Pig Farm.
Wait, there's... Oh, God. This is from live footage, right? Yeah.
This was pulled from Indie Street, which was on Much Music.
Yeah.
Simon Evans. And those names you're dropping, all these names you're dropping there, like, just love them all. Like, what a scene. Pig Farm.
Possibly the least known, best known band of that era, Pig Farm.
Last year,
we were more
with the Doughboys. Adam was here with Urban Decay, and this year Pig Farm.
So Ken Meyer,
Why'd you get them all back together
Alistair
again?
Jones,
Did you
Urban
mix
Decay
together
group.
or what? Usually.
Andy Stachansky was in the Urban Decay group as a drummer.
I think for us, the bands we were playing in just weren't that fulfilling. We liked better what we used to do, that's all. It was really a long
What year is this,
time,
91 or something?
In Pig Farm before. We did a lot of touring and a lot of
It's got to be
recording.
pretty...
It was frustrating for a while.
This is the young, dreaded Adam. not dread.
I
not
saw
fear.
that. Sort of like the guy
Years ago,
from, John
Memory
Kastner.
Tour
Yeah.
here
Well, that's why I was
performing.
offered the gig in the Doughboys. I have to tell you.
This is February
Philip,
5th,
Wojo Wojo.
1993.
Of Bare Naked Ladies, Rheostatic, producer fame. Yeah,
He's taking time out of the... Is he like a full-time member, or is he just in the band for now?
he's full-time.
He says he's full-time, yeah.
His episode of Toronto Mike
He'll
is
still be
fantastic.
producing.
Yeah.
You got to listen to
I
that.
think we'll be arranging our schedule around him.
And he doesn't do a lot of that,
Right
so.
now.
That's John singing.
Did you ever gig with Rusty?
I know Ken fairly well, but you know what? I don't remember. It seems like we probably did, but I don't remember.
So why did it come to an end for Pig Farm?
I think I was burnt
What's
out
working on the moment? Have you got a record
primarily.
in the work?
No record, just recording. in
You wanna hear it?
January.
Yeah,
we
no.
talked to a label here called
'Cause-
Mulberry Street in New York City. They said they'd put something out for us as soon as we hand them. So we're looking at January for that. In terms
That's
of
Dan
Canada,
Stucco.
haven't
Dan
got a
Stucco,
clue.
who's now in New Jersey
songs
somewhere.
written?
Hello, Dan.
Lots.
Mulberry Street. He lived
Are
on
you writing
Mulberry
as a
Street.
band or
That's a
just
story in
individual?
itself. There's a
For now,
mafia
because
story
the
in there.
band
Oh my God.
Is so young that,
So
start
the
pulling
question
at
was,
these
what happened to
threads.
Pig Farm?
Yeah.
Pig Farm,
Pig Farm songs.
I think it was my exhaustion. It was my pure exhaustion. We'd gone back and forth across the country a couple times. We had gone through 3 drummers in the space of, I don't know, 5 months. And I think it was, we tasked drummers with a really, they had to sing and they had to put up with John and I, basically. And we were a bit psycho, and we had big expectations of what a drummer would play in terms of, I guess, the sophistication. It wasn't a straight ahead rock and roll band, which probably was the reason why it didn't become a huge popular band. We did an album and we did a couple tunes like Midas Side B that would be, 4 chords, might appeal to to people in general. But if you listen to the rest of Plug, you'll see that there's bagpipes and there's some psychedelic moments and there's a lot of key changes and pitch changes and time changes that make it not very pop radio or not even alt radio. So I think we became one of those bands that musicians loved, but not so much the public, if you know what I mean.
I think so. I've always thought of like the Real Statics as a bit like that. Like they had a couple of exceptions, like Claire.
Yeah.
And maybe record body count, but most of it's sort of esoteric and it's a musician's musician, and he's not really going to be a pop. You're not going to hear them on Chum FM.
Yeah, I'm trying to. There's so much water on the bridge between the Rheostatics and ourselves. There's so many connections. Michael, and because Dave Clark left the Rios to join Pig Farm for a while as our drummer. We had a tour in '89, I think it was, with Dave Clark on drums. I think that. Maybe it was the outward expression of who we all are that was very different. And I've always thought of the Rheostatics, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all, is very, very, very smart, intellectual, sensitive, especially when I think of Martin Tielli's work, really insightful, but also very middle class and very stable. So whereas I think for Pig Farm, we were all about an inch from the street, and not in, and our reality was a little harsher. I'm thinking right now, and I don't know if Dave Bedini will remember this. We used to, one of our first tours of Canada was kind of constantly intersecting with the Rios and Dave Bookman as well, with Tim Meck on guitar, and a few other bands. And we went out to this festival in '87 in Vancouver, but we played an after-hours club in Calgary called the Acoustic Gaga. And it was a stopover where you could stay a few days. They had a great band room. You'd play from 12 to 4 a.m. kind of thing. That's when the gigs were. And I remember we played Wendell Clark, the real song Wendell Clark.
Yeah, the Ballad of Wendell Clark.
Well, Wendell Clark, we used to love playing
Volumes
that.
1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of those recordings were on at the end. There was a live recording at COAT that was used as part of an album with the Rios. Anyway, and I remember Benini and I getting in a bit of a tussle about the importance of punk versus pop or smart pop or alt pop. There was that, and I think there was a divide right there and then, because I think at the time, not now, but my perspective was informed by perhaps a harsher reality of what it was to live life, and And I think as time has gone on, everything from the Clash, it's amazing, you know, to think that what was considered antisocial is now, I hear it when I'm shopping in Loblaws. You know what I mean? It's one of those things.
Right.
And I don't know if this is what I'm saying is making any sense, but I know what you mean. The Rheostatics are are really ethereal and not popular music based, but somehow they managed to get across to their audience that they were lovable and likable, whereas we failed miserably in that respect. You know, we were critical and we had big mouths, and we didn't guard ourselves very well.
It sounds like a bit like what Ron Hawkins might say from Lowest to the Low, which is that they did everything they could to sort of shoot themselves in the foot when it came to any kind of, you know, major label They had the corporate rock sucks, I think, was the T-shirts they wore for their showcase, and they didn't do videos. You know, think of a Lowest to the Low video on Much Music. I'll give you as much time as you need. You know. Yeah. Where as Pursuit of Happiness would, you know, they filmed at Queen and Spadina. They filmed a video
right there at Soho. Yeah, I'm an adult now, right?
Yeah,
right there in front of the bamboo.
Big Much Music spins. Hey, you mentioned the Ballad of Wendell Clark, which I quite like because the video lets you see the old Mill Donuts. It's like an Etobicoke. It's like a view of old Etobicoke that I grew up knowing, and the Old Mill Donuts was at Dundas and Islington, kind of. Anyway, I went to high school at Michael Power down the street, so I knew this Old Mill Donuts. It's in the video. But when Dave Hodge came over, big super music fan Dave Hodge, who hosted Hockey Night in Canada at the time, he's name-checked in the Ballad of Wendell Clark. I think there's a line about Dave Hodge. It's a really cool line about Dave Hodge.
I think that's the same tune I'm thinking of, where we were all in the studio at CIUT.
Okay.
I think.
Well, then, because Dave Hodge, I played it when he came over, and he, as far as he knows, it's the only song he's ever been name-checked in, and he's a super music fan, so he was quite honored by that. But were you friendly with Dave Bookman?
Yes, but I didn't know him well as soon as his career launched as a
radio guy.
Yeah, as a radio guy.
Sure. Yeah. I just wondered. I know every time you play the Horseshoe, you see now the monument to him outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking, I want to tell you, this is how stupid we were. You know, we had a rule that if you wanted to be on the guest list and you were industry, you were automatically ejected. We would not let you in free. No, because our thing was, you've got the money. This is your job.
Right.
So, you know.
Very interesting. Mm-hmm. If you could do it all over again, would you could make Pig Farm? I'm thinking of like Sublime or something. Like, why can't Pig Farm be that? Like, would you do it differently if you could relive the late 80s, early 90s?
Absolutely not.
Okay, there's the answer.
And
no regrets.
No, none at all. And I think right now, because I'm playing a lot and my band is playing some of these songs, I think they stand out better now, and they work even better in the present context. I wouldn't change a thing. There's maybe a few lyrics I might alter, but but other than that, no. I'm proud of our legacy.
Okay, so the way things work around here is we spent 60 minutes basically getting ourselves to 1993, and maybe this might be the deepest pig farm dive you'll find on the World Wide Web, and I'm like honored that we're diving deep into Pig Farm. Can I give you some gifts? And then we won't be spending an hour in the next 30 years, but there is a subject I'm gonna see if you'll talk about that Blair Packham tipped me off about. But you ready for some gifts? And we'll walk through it.
Yes, I'm ready for some gifts. I see them here in front of me.
Okay. I mentioned we're all getting together at the GLB Brew Pub tonight. Well, I'm going to send you home with some fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery.
Beautiful.
Brewed, even though we're going to be at Jarvis and Queens Quay, it's brewed here in southern Etobicoke. So that's delicious and super fresh. And that's going home with you, Adam.
Thank you very, very much. Both you and GLB.
Thank you to GLB. Yeah. And Palma Pasta typically feeds us at TMLX events, but they're not feeding us tonight because Great Lakes is going to feed us with their great kitchen at the Brew Pub. But on November 30th, which is a Saturday, at noon to 3 p.m., we're all going to collect at Palma's Kitchen in Mississauga, and Palma Pasta will feed us. We'll record a live episode of Toronto Mike. So, Adam, if you showed up, I'd throw you on the mic to say hi. It's going to be a great TMLX 17. So just to repeat the day and time, because everyone is invited to this TMLX event at Palma's Kitchen, November 30th, 2024, noon to 3 p.m. Be there. Threw that in there. Okay. Moneris has sent over a wireless speaker for you, Adam. It's right
That's
there.
this.
Yeah, it's a great Bluetooth speaker, and you can listen to anything
That
you
is
want.
entirely cool. I love these.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
great too. But
Yeah.
you must promise me that you'll subscribe and listen to Yes, We Are Open, which is an award-winning podcast from Moneris. Season 7 dropping now. Al Grego, who will be at TMLX 17 on November 30th at Palma's Kitchen, he visited Winnipeg, Manitoba, and he spoke to small businesses about their origins, their struggles, their future outlook. And they're not really business stories, but they're personal stories about businesses. And you'll learn a great deal from Yes, We Are Open. So you got a nice new speaker.
That's awesome. I've written it down, and I'm just admiring this. You know, this
I
is
love
gonna
that you
last-
write stuff down. That's amazing.
This is going to last, I got to say, about 20 seconds on my desk, and then my 15-year-old's going to come and grab it and steal it and take it to school.
Well, it'll
She'll
be,
be very
well loved.
Do you know what I mean? I'll try to keep it going.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So I got 2 older kids, 2 younger kids, and I always refer to the 2 older kids as the teens.
Mhm.
But what's happened this past summer is the youngest of the 2 turned 20. And I realized that even though we're still calling them the teens, neither of them are teenagers anymore. And I just think that's a fun fact that they're still called the teens, even though they're 22 and 20.
Yeah.
But they're still stealing the Bluetooth speakers that we leave around from Moneris. So
There you go.
that doesn't change. It doesn't change.
It's a
All right.
constant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to shout out recyclemyelectronics.ca, because if you go there and put in your postal code, you'll find out a place near you. You can drop off your old electronics, your old devices, your old cables to be properly recycled so the chemicals do not end up in our landfill.
Excellent.
And last but not
Very good.
least, did you get that measuring tape? Was there? Oh, you got it right.
I
there.
love this the best. Sorry.
It's okay. You can say that.
I'm enjoying this the most
You
at the
can say
moment. Over time, I may prefer another one of the gifts. For instance, when I crack open my GLB beer
Right.
and listen to music. Ripley's Funeral Home.
Oh, Ridley.
Ridley's Funeral.
Ridley Funeral. That's okay. Ridley Funeral
Yeah.
Home, which is at 14th and Lakeshore. And Brad Jones has a great podcast. He's the funeral director there. He's going to be at TMLX 16 tonight at Great GL. I'll introduce you to Brad Jones. His
Excellent.
podcast is called Life's Undertaking, and every 2 weeks we drop a new episode, and it's fantastic. So thank you, Great Lakes. Thank you, Palma. Thank you, Moneris. Thank you, Raymond James. And thank you, Ridley Funeral Home. All right, you ready to get back to this now? So I don't know how to do this.
I'm a little terrified, actually.
What are you measuring?
My life. No, I know what the next topic
Well,
is.
okay,
And-
so
and I
we-
have to be. I'm
you have
just
to be
going to say
careful.
I have to be very, very careful, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, tell me.
And if we can keep it to, because the effects of politics in the environment I recently left, which is the university. I'm even gonna are serious enough to make it difficult for me to earn a living right now. And my spouse, my wife, is also at that in that environment, and we are finding that what I've gone through is affecting her environment as well, quite strongly.
Well, look, I'm not going to
So-
get you in any trouble here. I won't even mention this
Mhm.
institution of higher learning. Okay, I won't. I
Thank
won't
you.
name it if you don't want me to.
Thank
but
you.
so just so we left you in '93 here. So you were you were a musician. You're a
Yeah.
sound engineer. At some
Yeah.
point, you end up at a institution of higher learning.
Yes.
And the note I have, so I'll just say the note, and then I don't think this will get anyone in trouble. But there's a conflict with this university.
Mhm.
Like, just share what you can. That won't
Yeah.
get you in big trouble. Just because I was told a little bit that I won't repeat because I don't want to say anything. I'll let you say everything. But it's kind of a wild story, and say what you can.
Well, I can't tell you enough that I wish, and I'm thinking 3 or 4 months from now, it might be an entirely different environment where I can really speak openly. But people, I don't know how well your audience knows the present environments at universities. It's pretty clear, QP is, let's just say, very adamant about his position in the Middle East. And those politics and the environment of York. Okay, you know what? It requires some context
Okay.
to make it very
Take your time.
clear. So, because I know that now words and can be misinterpreted or reinterpreted. I come from an environment, and my own family is composed. We'll call it polyracial. My partner's family immigrated from East Africa. And I'm from an environment that was it's just very open, very kind, very loving, and not, I would say we spoke briefly of my father, someone who taught me to take every single person on their own terms in every way I could. Now, I realize that when it comes to politics or, figuring out the pension plan or something, it's very difficult to do that. And so I don't want to, engage in anything about, the need for organization or groups. But in my case, let's just say I defended. I was teaching rock and roll music, and a lot of my research, I should talk about my research, is about the integration of cultures, and the rejoicing in the integration of cultures, and that includes ethnicities. And it became clear at York that was not something they rejoice in as well. So when it came, I was teaching a course that has been taught by different really wonderful professors, one of which is Rob Bowman, Rob Sims, Matt Vanderwood, people who kind of pioneered, at least at York. Oh, there, I just said it.
You've actually said it a few times, but
Yeah.
I said I wouldn't say it, but you can say it.
Well, anyway, it's not about York because I think it's about an entire environment. And I'll just make that clear. It's not I can tell you it's not unique to that and to that particular university. And the history of popular music in North America, which is the story of integration. It's the story of an expression of many cultures, many languages, many experiences, and that's the beauty and the best part of it. It was made, and all I can say, it was made clear to me that was not the story I was to tell. And so I lost funding. I lost my position in research. And yeah, it's so it's just very, I view it as a very sad time for culture. And being in, you can imagine, as I explained, briefly what my family is. My wife's family left East Africa because during the Idi Amin era, and they're Goan, and the Goans have a kind of combined culture of South Asian, India, Portuguese, and also African. So there's a really wonderful mix of cultures there. But they were forced to leave Africa for Toronto and different parts of Europe for similar reasons that we have now, which some people have this desire to segregate and to define themselves based in certain, I guess, categorical purities. I would say that because that's, to me, what is going on. There's a real desire to segregate people. And I'll give you one example. In our family, a safe space based in color divides our family because we are considered a danger to each other. That's the simplest example I can give of the bigger picture, which is if you're a happy, open, productive pair, but happen to not appear the same, that really offends a lot of people. And they find it necessary to segregate and separate you because I think you're an example of what is possible, not because we are in ourselves some kind of incredible magical pair, but I do find that the experience of families like ours can really put a finer point on political discussions, racial discussions. It's. I had a long talk with my wife this morning about this and where to go, and I think I really want to focus on more positive things right now because I can tell you, it's really been. It's been a trip, man.
Yeah, well, I can tell because you're being careful.
Yeah,
Like
and I'm
it-
not usually like that, but this is the most serious. I can't. It's the most serious I've been, I think, ever. And I've been through a lot in my life, but this particular issue is yeah, it's heavy. And I would just like, from my perspective, my personal perspective is to be open, to be kind. I believe that compassion is a word that suggests you want the best for others. And if I can enter into all my relationships like that, then I will.
But I mean, just to add a little clarity, maybe without getting you in any trouble, but
Yeah.
like, did you say something in your class that was complained about to somebody at this institution? Like, what
Yeah,
exactly
I
was
can-
the impetus for you having this conflict?
Yeah, I wrote factual responses to students in their papers I was grading. The students never saw the responses, but the person in charge of the course reported those responses. And I was taken up to the dean's office to defend my position. I won. My responses were factual. And there is no doubt in anyone's mind that what I had said was absolutely correct from an academic point of view and from a history point of view. And it's nothing that crazy. That's the absurd part. It's not something that I think would offend most people, but
But you're not comfortable at this point telling us what exactly you said that caused the ire here. Like, I know I don't
Yeah.
want, like, I don't
know.
even have my problem is I don't even have a sense of what kind of trouble we're talking about here. Like
Well, it's based on present, political views and stuff. I just stated some simple facts about who contributed to popular music in North America. So loosely, I could tell you that I supported the writers of, say, the song "Strange Fruit," famously performed by Billie Holiday, written by a Jewish writer, Mel Aberpole, I believe. I supported Link Ray, who, Rumble.
Yeah.
Charlie Patton, who's a famous blues singer, who is, I think, a mix of African American and Apache. Don't quote me on that because I don't. But there's an indigenous element there. In short, popular music is made of contributions from so many different people from so many different walks of life, ethnicities, cultures, and practices. And it was made clear to me that I must not say that.
I'm so confused. What is their position that would be
The
erroneous
position
of
that
making that statement?
it was offensive to say that music, there's a movement within the universities to be purist about art forms. In other words, if you come from somewhere, you perform that music. If you look like this, you perform that music. And some people shouldn't perform some musics because it's not their culture.
Oh, appropriation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So their perspective comes from that. The point it's not so much, in the end, I was taken to the dean's office, the associate dean's office, chastised, but it was thrown out. There were 3 complaints. It was completely thrown out because I did nothing wrong, and I said nothing offensive either, by the way. But the result was the hard part, which was days later the removal of support for my research, and I wasn't paid for my work, and really I haven't worked for them since.
So serious repercussions,
very
ramifications
serious
for this.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds, and again, unless you're withholding something dramatic here from what I'm hearing here and from my chats with Blair,
Yeah.
it sounds pretty innocuous. Like it what you're saying you said should not offend a reasonable person. Like,
Not at
unless
all.
I'm missing something.
Not at all. No,
I've
no.
been known to miss something here and there.
And the only reason I'm being very, very careful is because we're in a situation right now where it can ruin my family. It can ruin the ability of us to work for something that I've worked for a long time. It can ruin my wife's ability to work.
You don't want to do that.
And I really, I'm not sure that yeah, it's hard because in effect, my instinct is to defend myself and tell you everything,
Right.
because I know the listeners would kind of know. But I think the listeners probably know if they're listening to your podcast, they're informed, they're interested, they like
Don't be so sure.
the variation in your topics, that you can read the newspaper and figure out what's going on there, and I can assure you, and I can tell you about myself, which is I love integration. I love cultural sharing. I love it when new forms of work emerge from different disciplines evolving. I celebrate that in my life, and I celebrate that in my family. That's what I'm about, and that's not what the university environment that I was in is about. They are not for that. They,
It's disappointing to hear this, only because we live in this. We consider ourselves a cultural mosaic. I believe that's the term we would use. And you talked about, what term did you use for your family? Polycultural? What was this term you used?
Polyethnic, I think I said.
So I'm from my family too. My wife is a woman of color, and my youngest two kids are mixed race, I guess we'd say. And it's pretty commonplace, especially in big cities like Toronto. It's pretty much it's commonplace, and it's disappointing that those statements you would make would cause any conflict for you and would affect your livelihood in any way. Disappointing.
I mean, I could ask you then. I mean, do you have experiences? It could be that it's just that environment, and not out here in the independent world. Do you have experiences in your family wherein you think, I wish that hadn't gone that way? Or where you experience
with race? With
race.
No,
good.
No,
I'm glad.
No, but again, I've noticed different races are treated differently by the bigoted amongst us.
Yeah.
And my wife is a Filipino background,
right?
And it may very well be different if it were a different background, but
right. And I think there is variations there. Perceptions of people and what they might consider doable or acceptable.
And within the culture, one argument I had with my wife before we were married actually was very common in her family to do things to whiten your skin, because and I pointed out to my wife that the whole concept that whiter is somehow better, even within a race, is racist.
It's abhorrent.
Yeah,
it's just abhorrent. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, that's not uncommon in the South Asian community as well.
Right.
I mean, and yeah.
And even I know. I mean, because I read a lot and I follow a lot. But yeah, even within the Black community, there's different shades of black, and it seems to be racism to the shade. You and I can chat here all we want about how wrong and disgusting and disappointing it is, us two pasty white guys here. But what's more disappointing to me is this institution of higher learning, which I have not named yet, but you have named a few times. But I may have a very dear loved one who attends this institution of higher learning, possibly, maybe, allegedly. But it is disappointing that we're not encouraging the discussions you're having at those levels, and sort of not only denouncing them but withdrawing some kind of funding that's affecting your livelihood here. Like, this is all very disappointing.
Well, and I would say that I honestly don't think there's anything to be gained from me dragging them into it. It's the same game, and I don't want to play it. I don't want to enter it from the same intent.
Well, it sounds to me like you're if you were like a lone wolf out there and you didn't.
I'm not.
If you were, you may have a different tone and be a little more deliver a little more real talk here. But you are not a lone wolf.
I'm not a lone wolf, and it's not. I mean, I can say this: there are investigations happening right now, and it's apparent that the institution itself is not interested in looking at itself. And so there are larger organizations. I've had to deal with the Ombudsman for Ontario, head of universities, etc.
Wow. Serious business.
Yeah, and yeah.
Okay, so I'm glad you're sharing what you are sharing, and I respect that you can't share everything.
I wish, God, it because of the kind of person I am. I'm more inclined to just be absolutely. But I do think there's an aspect of this is to not enter in to the mudslinging. My experience has been that it is not helpful. It is just not helpful because there are way better mudslingers than me, and they'll and at the
They'll
moment
enjoy it, right?
and then they have their microphone as well, and that's the way the world is, right? Like that's the world we inhabit.
I know for a fact there are FOTMs, again, guests on this very program who were dear friends, artists who are not speaking right now because one might put something on social media about people in Gaza and maybe civilians being, killed, and that somebody who is a staunch supporter of Israel's right to defend themselves would be so offended by this, they would see it as anti-Semitic and stop communication with this person. Like this is the world we live in today.
Yeah, there's I've heard a phrase called the unread library. There's these great leaps. Sorry, great, not good, large. There's the university guy in me, the PhD in me. We're in an age where people will say one thing and connect it with a meme or a system of information that doesn't necessarily compute. That statement you made. If you say, even I was thinking on my way up, what if Mike asked me about Zionism? And I thought, that's a word. That's one of those words that if you asked someone, are you a Zionist? They would immediately attach it to so many different ways of being and ways of thinking. But ultimately, it would be, on one side of the conversation, many of your friends would hug you and pat you, and on the other side, they might call you a genocidal maniac. It's really so crazy that a single word could mean such different things to so many people. And that's why we're in such a dangerous environment. I mean, it's because the way people interpret these words. And I think there's been a lot of effort to recategorize words and give them meaning. And the internet has a lot to do with that. And so it can be very difficult to have a discussion without defining those words first.
Yeah, you almost have to kind of set the ground rules for language first, before we can even, converse about this. And some language is so loaded and politicized.
And I have to say, I hate it when people kill each other. And I'm very astonished at people's increasing interest in separating themselves through identity. I think it's a very harmful process. I think identity is something that we should attenuate as much as possible, if you see what I mean. That the more we separate, the less we are able to communicate, the more violent we become. And but that would be my main statement, is that I think that I'm troubled by the focus on identity and perceived meaning. And I think people also have these envelopes of time in which they operate, and often, like something like the Middle East, people are discussing it in terms of, well, this is 48 and this is 60, and really, the moment somebody does that, I think, well, you haven't read history, because it didn't begin then.
Right.
It began 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. And these are the stories of all cultures. And this is going back to my research, which is every culture evolved from another culture. Every single one. And virtually everyone on the planet walked or rode a horse or took a boat from somewhere to somewhere. And the imaginary boundaries, and I say this loosely, of a country didn't exist the way they did before. So you might call yourself, I don't know, let's use some Irish, although that's a country that has had its boundaries for a long, long time, being an island. But let's pick something like Czechoslovakia. That's, it's kind of landlocked. And though that it wasn't called Czechoslovakia. And if to claim that is your identity is a really interesting thing. It's a very recent idea to be Czechoslovakian or to be Canadian or to be really to name yourself in terms of any modern country boundaries. These German is, it could have been Bavaria before it, not so long ago. I'm not sure what the desire is to identify with these commercial boundaries, right? These boundaries of ownership. I could go off on a tangent here, but
no, it sounds like we're going to need an academic return here to dive deep. Less pig farm, more of this. I think
I
on the
would
return.
love that because I could talk endlessly about.
Hey, and shout out to Rob Bowman if I just can, because he's been over here, and I want to get him back as well. Maybe I get you two back together. I don't know how friendly you are with Rob these days, or if you're too much for much, as they say.
No, well, it's funny. Rob Bowman and I. So when I entered the institution, Rob Bowman, I had a meeting with him because I had this long history in music already before I went to. I had never been to university when I started university at 49 years old. So because I had support of a few people, Rob Bowman being one of them, I was advanced beyond the BA stage. I was already a professional musician, and that happens sometimes. Sue Foley is another person, blues player who did that at the same institution. A few other people I know, and went straight into the MA program. So, but Rob and I never actually ended up working together. I've worked on courses he developed, and we see each other around. But Rob Bowman's close friend, Matt Vanderwood, that's someone I'm really associated with, and they work together a lot. In fact, I think Matt, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, if you're listening, I think Matt still has your record collection. So you can imagine how important that connection is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you seen the, I'm sure you have, but the Stax documentary series?
I've read his initial PhD discourse on Stax.
Because Rob's
cover to
all
cover.
over this thing, and it's a really well produced documentary,
Mhm.
and I quite enjoyed it.
Then in the newest one about that Toronto singer, because I think that's been the latest focus for Rob, right? Jackie Shane?
Yes.
Jackie Shane.
Jackie Shane. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
A wonderful, famous R&B and transgendered performer in Toronto. Yeah.
No, great subject matter.
Yeah.
And I thought as a palate cleanser, so just before we do a little wrap up here and we play you out here, just maybe a little post Pig Farm Adam Fox. Is that cool? I'm going to play this.
Oh, yeah. Good. I mixed this in my little bachelor apartment once. And most of the guitars. This is appropriate because the song it hadn't really been released, and I put it out in response to what's going on. The song is "How Do You Spend Your Love?"
Well, you can hit the post because you know exactly where it is.
Yeah.
Feel your vibe a mile away. You got nothing left to give that can make him stay. Never, it's not such a mountain, not such a mountain. You gotta stop counting the days. The mesmerized by springtime day, and your conscience will be clear by then. Remember, it's not such a mountain, not such a mountain. You gotta stop counting the days, because you've been left to borrow. I'd like to point out that you did not have it all, and how you spend your love. It's got nothing to do with some great God above. How do you spend your love?
Digging it, Adam. Excellent. Well, amazing.
Thanks for playing that. I'm glad that that's the way out of this thing, because really that song is about looking inside and making a decision about how you're going to move forward. It really is about joy. Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed this chat very much, Adam. I'm hoping I do see you at TMLX 16 tonight at 6 p.m. at
I
GLB
can't
Brew
wait.
Pub.
I can't wait.
All right, we got food.
Yeah.
We're gonna have beer. We'll have a good convo. You'll reconnect with former bandmate Blair Packham.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm playing with Blair now, actually. I'm doing all his solo stuff. So I'm now the bass player with Blair Packham, not the Jitters with Blair.
But there is a Jitters reunion.
There is. I'm opening for that show.
Where is that show?
Hughes Room. November 8th.
Shout out to Jane Harbury.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And where can people learn more, see you? on our way out here? Like
I-
if we want to see you live.
Well, I'm mostly hitting out-of-town stuff, so smaller clubs and basements. But Hughes Room, you can get stuff. I'm all over the internet, Instagram and Facebook, and I'm sometimes known as Eddie Greer on Facebook.
Oh no, you fooled me. I got a message from Eddie Greer, and I'm like, who is this guy? He says he's going to see me soon.
That's a long.
Is that an alias? What's going on?
It's an
here?
alias. It's my mother's family's. That's the Irish side of my family. My great aunt Melba was my substitute mother, and she was born in 1911, and she passed away about 10 years ago. But so I took her name when I needed an alter ego. I had been being harassed as Adam Fox a little bit, and I thought I'm just going to go. Another way to shoot yourself in the foot as an artist, basically.
Yeah, change that branding every once in a while so
Yeah.
nobody knows who the hell you are.
Exactly. Yeah. Go for autonomy when you want to be make a living.
On your way here, was there a specific anecdote or story that you desperately wanted to share that we somehow overlooked? Because this is the moment. Or did we hit all the...
No, you know what? I'll just share this. Recently, I got my busking license, and with the TTC. So you audition, and that has been one of the most enriched and kind of uplifting experiences I've had in a long time. To just go out, play the guitar, and busk for 2 hours or 3 hours. Great practice. Recently, a young woman came by and folded up a little note. You have to imagine this. Somebody hears, I was at Queen's Park Station. And they've heard you from maybe far off down another part of the station, but she put a note that was colored and had a little message in it, just thanking me for playing, and she quoted Bob Marley, taped a couple of tunings to it, put it in my case. When I opened, and I just, the amount of effort it took, she would have had to, at some point, pause in the station, take this piece of paper apart,
Yeah, that
color it,
takes some
create this
effort.
artwork, use whatever supplies she had, and drop it in my case, never to be heard from again, possibly. Didn't inquire, want to speak, just dropped it in there, and my faith in humanity is constantly refreshed.
No, love that so much. Amazing. And you're not the first TTC busker to visit the basement, because founding member of Moby Grape,
Wow, yeah.
Don Stevenson, has been down here, and Don does the exact same thing, and he loves it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we didn't even get into Los Dakotas, but that was a busking band as well. That was our thing.
Well, we got to save something for the
Yeah,
sequel
okay.
here. My goodness
Okay.
gracious. And that brings us to the end of our 1,568th show.
Good night.
You can follow me all over the place at Toronto Mike. Go to torontomike.com. Is there one place where you update in the social media
Yeah,
landscape?
I guess the best place is Adam Fox, Luck Factory, Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
always.
tag you there. I'll tag you there
Okay.
when I post this.
Thank you.
Much love to all who made this possible. Again, that's Great Lakes Brewery. We're at their brew pub at Jarvis and Queens Quay tonight. Palma Pasta will be there at Palma's Kitchen November 30th. RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Raymond James Canada, Maneris, and Ridley Funeral Home. Seawall, I actually have to go to the calendar right now, Adam. I don't even know. who's
November
on next.
30th?
Well, that's November 30th. Yeah, Palma's Kitchen at noon. You'll love it. Who's on next? Shall I tell you? It is. Pausing for Beck. Oh, R&B singer Sean Jones is visiting the basement. Sean Jones. So check that out. See you then.
Stocks, the class struggle explodes. And out there, this guitar is the band.